Hi, welcome to the Segue reading series for 2025. And we'll start in about 5 minutes with Evelyn Reilly and Mohammed Zenia. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Segue reading series. Tonight we have two wonderful readers, Mohammed Zenia and right now Evelyn Reilly. This is our 47th year of doing this series, and I'm kind of happy about that. And I'm pleased to introduce Evelyn Reilly. The scope and scale of her new book, Having Broken R, can you in the audience see that at home? I don't know if it's readable, but
it's very readable.
it's been pointed out that there's a pun there. The scope and scale of her new book are immense in that she addresses first all that happens but is unheard, two, the desire to live inside a picture, three, the aesthetic of detachment, environmental aesthetics, and the aesthetic of being together. To focus on one specific, her hyper-awareness of the sources of her need to know, she ends up asking Blake, "Dear William Blake, my flower is sick and regressing to the kingdom of the elements," to which he replies, "Dear Evelyn, I think you meant to address this to Immanuel Kant, for whom a flower is an example of free beauty. So I wanted to know what's this free beauty, because I haven't seen that much of it." So I went to Kant, and I had the feeling that Reilly is speaking both of beauty without any other function, that is a purer kind of beauty, and the violence of our current circumstances. Since Kant's idea of free beauty contrasts with his notion of dependent beauty, which is the beauty that occurs when something fulfills its purpose, an ethical beauty, which I assume is what Reilly is hoping for poetry to achieve in its effort to stop silencing nature, to stop separating nature from humanity, to find ways of integrating humanity and nature into a single complex entity through, of all things, poetry. And for all that to occur in one book of poetry is quite a feat. So with these acrobatic contortions, we readers are sourcing the history of our relationship with our surroundings as Reilly seeks to change our present relationships. Quote, "The wind is full of shifting gears, which the overlords use to exert their usual machinations. Financial instruments, public relations messages, there aren't enough scare quotes in the world for this." And Reilly has multiple alternative approaches for us, which is of course what we've been waiting for. Quote, "The slight chill of the word ethics, even as I used it a minute ago." Quote, "The notion of the soul as interiority, what crap tonight. The trees multiply the extensions and extensions and extensions." And this citation from Reilly points to Lynn Keller's view of Reilly's work as dealing with scale, which is where I started. Specifically, though not in Reilly's poetry, might be the 100-meter-long windmill blades being trucked to Chinese deserts as I speak. Conceptually, which is Reilly's poetic turf, quote, "The iterations of the leaf repeat the verbiage of the foliage imperfectly." And, quote, "Every bloom brings a new structure of feeling into the room." Through these multiple spirits of foliage, Reilly announces that she's not seeking a single solution, but an all of the above, speaking to each of you here individually. And so she is here to speak to all of us. Please give a warm welcome to Evelyn Reilly.
How's the sound? Is that good? Thank you, James, for that really thoughtful introduction. I'm going to mostly read from this book, Having Broken R, today, which came out from BlazeVox about a year ago. But I do generally think of myself as a roof author. And I'm really grateful to James for having published 3 of my books, and also for being in dialogue with me about environmental poetics for just many years. And that's been really valuable. And he himself has written a number of books on this subject, which I really recommend to you. So thanks to him, and also to Lonely for keeping this great series going. And also to our audience today, because I just know there's all these other poetry events going on. So just really appreciate everyone to be here for me and Mohammed, who I look forward to hearing read for the first time. So I'm going to start with reading from a poem sequence from this book, and then, which James quoted some sections from, and then for the most part of the reading, I'm going to read some new work. So this sequence is called Sleeping with Trees. The gates to nothingness open 1/8 of an inch each night, framed by trees that grow exuberantly. Among the leaves, blooms of durable insects. A limb reaches out into the emptiness, sinking to make contact, then grasp. You study all this from your bed through your night goggles, the world that continues without us. The drawers of thinking won't close, so overflowing with non-disposables in the ambushes of memory. Nothing put away stays in place. The sound of no longer needed body parts dropping to the ground. You take a tiny rake to clean up this mental landscape, a sort of curator gardener paying your respects to the wakefulness of trees. Not just any plant, the most sensitive of plants, bends to your touch, your presence. How could it be otherwise, mimosa waking up to the weeping of flower heads and larvae, the usual worm chatter and dissonant turf? Cold, hard-working birds drop out of a sky ghosted with the colors of their disappearance. You lay a torn sweatshirt on the pyre, a few poems and an empty container of Roundup, intone some prophecies based in statistics. Sleeping with moon-enameled branches and silent pulses of missing insects, spears of cheap pillow down set up a battle in one ear, while the trees persist in their refusal to be individuals, the rhizomes that aid and abet them spread. All this with the only light coming from the crack under the door to the common hallway. You remember the words, first reconcile with the neighbors. This is the only true and hardest prayer. Sipping cosmic energy through light green straws and at the same time digging toes into the timelines of the dead, the trees create a disturbance that is not really disturbing to the resting places of the naturally interred. While someone's endless pleading, another's eternal worry roam the hunting grounds of the villi and microvilli. The ceiling nods in concert with the heads of dried grass, rattling open your dream, just as an imaginary spring was coming into bloom again. But you live in the age you live. The sound of generations beat down on your head, using it as a drum skin of accusation. All that is broken, broken, broken. Out of the tree cradling plastic, a forecast of sea. Above it, a stellar umbrella unfolds for the 14 billionth time. Somewhere a reckoning ticks, but you aren't listening as you clip the eyebrow hairs that curl down into the eyes of the beloved. The notion of the soul as interiority, what crap tonight. The trees multiply the extensions and extensions of extensions as darkness descends into the holding pens where metallic blankets cover the ankles of sleeping children. The night is loud with the becoming of insects, the silence of plants digesting another day's worth of star material along the fence lines. Into the war poems of the environment comes the bright clamor of the rich putting on their armor. You get up to clear some space on your desk of doubt, looking for a definition of love you lost somewhere. Chains of ordinary kindness, self-perpetuating in thin air, a force that emanates radially. Now creatures free from bilateral being are entangled in a canopy of forest thinking drenched in the language of rising seas. Octopi and other cephalopods offer such appealing methods of propulsion and perception, you are almost carried off by them. But the wind is picking up, and you're afraid of losing power. You open the windows to feel the wet unleafing of fixed positions, other planetary sympathies. The iterations of the leaf repeat the verbiage of the foliage imperfectly, and the flowers on the wallpaper recite a mantra of misalignment, repetition that speaks differently. Every bloom brings a new structure of feeling into the room. Each twin sleeps under a different shoulder in the womb of dreams. Things that close in order to open again, revisitations of old spiritual possessions. So what has been the nature of your participation, the method of your self-dispersion? Have you taken part in disruption when disruption was needed? What limits have you set for your explorations? What floor for your excavations? Why just there and not further? Why are these questions so unnerving? Is that why we are both sweating and shivering? Tell us about your position in the scheme of ecosystem services, as opposed to, say, these trees. No need to worry, this is all just for informational purposes. Now diagram the nodes of your connectivity. Don't forget the burrs on your pants today, the jet streams and the rafts, the stowaways riding the plastic ropes of the oceans. Snow takes the place of leaves among things that fall inaudibly. All that happens but is unheard. The desire to live inside a picture, streams and mountains, rocks and gorges, this is the aesthetic of detachment. Trees are to landscape as books are to decorating, a poet says, obscene. This is the environmental aesthetic. Another brings your attention to the friends admiring the snow in an era of general depravity. This is the aesthetic of being together in violent times. So I'm going to, for the rest of the time, read from this thing I've been working on with a kind of maybe over-the-top title of Long Preludes to the Disappearance of Time. It has two epigraphs. One is from the physicist Carlo Rovelli, which a friend is here who recommended this book to me, and he'll see how it has a place in this work. In the frenzy of thermal molecular mingling, all the variables that can possibly vary do so continuously. And it has another epigraph from Bernadette Mayer's Midwinter Day. Like long preludes, I dream I don't want to get into this, but it's soothing and exciting like weathering. Long preludes to the disappearance of time. Worn, dirty, tacky plastic Worn, dirty, tacky plastic ceiling sticker constellations. Above this, my all-night keyboard station. What the day constructs, the night demolishes, the world being nothing but change. Still, I'm trying to find an enduring pattern in a night noisy and hungry with ceaseless desiring, need too great to be born, or just too great to be born alone. Feel it as a texture all around. Having been an animist as a child, isn't everyone an animist as a child? I can still perceive the vibrations. This dimmer switch detail deletion, antibiotic-resistant fever vision sends me out to pick up a prescription. Feel a scurry across the ankle, mutual startle in the shared scaffold corridor. But walking can be an opening to the remarkable, streets as intervals, avenues as duration. Demolition brings us closer, Radus norvegicus and Homo sapiens, shrewd, resilient urban cousins. The tiered network risk management psychopharmaceutical system hands a drug right over the counter, fixes one thing and exacerbates another. I'm quoting verbatim. Side effects include suicidal ideation, even in those with no history of depression. aka everyone here in our quantum summa swoon soup of seeming, meaning, being, or rather becoming, for there is no is, only shared clouds of probability, bumptious blips in the warping of space-time stratigraphy. Is this physics or God or history? One thing for certain, it's happening in the expanded present, which is this exact moment plus an interval that is neither past nor future, 15 minutes on Mars, 8 years on the nearest M-type star, millions of years in the Andromeda galaxy. Thus is the now. But back to recent sick, ordinary sick times sick, with meds in hand and a phrase that won't exit the brain. A musical fragment as perpetual inhabitant thumping away all day. Earworms usually go away on their own, Wikipedia says, but in some cases can be serious. Ways to get rid of them: 1, listen to the whole song. 2, distract yourself. 3, chew gum to activate the motor cortex, or just return to the room where the beloved is sleeping. Try to recalibrate the neurons in the roar of the snore. Okay, give up and put on headphones again. Vibration is a form of material being, a means of transport in both its senses, maybe to the end of time, a place where there is neither past nor present, and a quartet by Messiaen written in a prison camp, Stalag 8A to be exact. The music-loving Germans let him practice in the latrine with just enough heat so his hands didn't freeze. The same soldiers who loved to sing in the streets, Hymn to Joy, Margarita the Maiden. Type, what begins in music ends in stars. But what's up with this Paradiso stuff? Having been cast out by a cruel tribe, the capital P poet wasn't above revenge, got to meet everyone a second time, settle some scores. Maybe this is the definition of hell. Genealogies of harm passed down, heat-seeking missiles that run through us first on their way through an expanding universe where we, dark listeners, try to tune to the enlarging channels. Attempting to cease the brain, I lie down once again in this planetary moonroom of constellated sleep. Time has a direction only where there's heat to flow, from a state of less to more disorganization. Thus we are falling apart together as chaos always increases, and I seek some soft synaptic relinquishment and a mind that blinks off computer screenishly. Dirty puddle dappled by dawn fingers' daily damage revelation of trash all over the street. So many unintended consequences of a life, span, cycle, style, one of so many brutal words. Where is the help? At root, who cares? What is the drug, a friend writes, and with the day, even the dream of loss is lost. But the dream also causes disturbance, then maybe change. Takes too long always, and gradualism can be a form of indecency, I think, as I return to my computer screen, propelled by the addiction to connection inscribed in our genes. Seems the local twerp is on the warpath again, certain he can fix everyone's incompetence. Thus, the digital scum rises to the surface. So he thinks he can figure out the New York City building department, the elders murmur on the stair. Isn't he aware there are things beyond our knowing, this being the true metaphysics of city living? Still, there's always a counter melody, a recurring figure in the window across the way beside a yawning cat. There can be imaginary friends in adulthood if you send a strand of acknowledgement across the air shaft. Floral, arboreal, fake lake vermin abatement stations amid remnant pizza fragments. Yes, this is the park part. Take a seat among the exclamatory colors and try to make contact with things happening on scales that aren't obvious to us. The cosmic filaments and the quantum particles, the biotic film of the pond water, the codependencies of the root nodule, who's who inside the microbial community of the discarded Chinese food container. in the subway, keeping my overdetermined diffident distance, in the physical proximity force field of urban anonymity, where the poetry sometimes stabs me with shame for my art form. But today, the nonplussed New Yorkers watch as a young woman gyrates around the center pole, tossing hair and hips while holding a phone out for multiple takes. The doors open and a trainload of missives are delivered, bringing the upper and lower worlds back into synchronization, the variable of expanding present being about 12 seconds per station. Seeking to pay homage to our intersecting instances, I return home with my collection of fallen leaves gathered from some of the city's more than 130 kinds of trees, meaning to place them on the altar of cross-species compost destiny. Not unpleasing the perfume of deterioration, the dying into the great recycling, but I set them down and start rummaging instead in a closet where the lost luggage of the soul is stored, related to, but not the same as baggage. Maybe in this box labeled miscellaneous, you never know what will come in handy. The opening of one thing leads to other unfoldings. Turn on the little lamp as the afternoon darkens. 3 temperatures of light, now pretty standard, ordinary, affordable, useful, common, and protective. I like the poetry of that, so I put it on repeat. Ordinary, affordable, useful, common, and protective, as a motorcycle roars down the street. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, it screams. Vibrations are a form of material being, while I'm still trying to weave some kind of connection from this opt-out system of participation. Do you want to see things more warmly or coolly, or will you just remain a lukewarm visionary? Turning to some helpful pre-shades, undergoing their loss in a preparatory way, sitting on the couch holding this one's hand, taking it as we walk down the street, touching people without their permission lately, but reaction not much anyway, silvering hair, gender anonymity. Hey, gray lady, I think you're an alien, but at least you're not a tourist, the man said while exploring the trash can on the corner of Elizabeth and Houston. Generation above disappeared. Generation below giving an animal shove as it rushes past. Knocks me a bit closer to the edge, but time haunts them too. Some say it's stories that heal us, but I can't pick them out of the daily tapestry, much less find a coherent pattern embedded in the overall delirium. All that obscures what was supposed to be some kind of narrative thread in this flawed reproduction of a flawed reproduction, where it's impossible to distinguish the intentional from the random. Riffing off this peripheral liminal, over-caffeinated afternoon exhaustion perception, the fumes of which I'm running on, scale shift, scale shift, scale shift. Now we're with the atoms and subatoms again, where the hardest stone is in reality a vibration of complex events. And as I bump into your duration situation, and time no longer holds together as a coherent canvas. Lately, I've been taken with the word discern, as in to distinguish with difficulty, an admission of uncertainty, which is somehow calming. It's important to remember that some feelings may be mostly chemical, important to discern them. Having had the scales removed from my eyes at Northwell Ambulatory, maybe things are now too deceptively clear, the halos around the signs having vanished and oncoming blasts of light muted. Is this a warmer or cooler temperature of seeing? Relative, cultural, habitual, grievous, memorial, and gravitational, time is the perception of change, says Aristotle. Something I measure in the present of my mind, says Augustine, or just one aspect of overlapping fields constituting the weave of what we call reality. Thus I gravitate you, I reciprocal you, I conversant with you in these long relational preludes in which there's no variable T for time, still trying to manage a bit of flow and fearing this may just be some poetry beautification programs, a smokescreen, even a way of not living. I mean the Tintern abbiness of it, the memories, the scenery, the long-term companionship thing. Perhaps the emotion of time is what time is for us, says the lyrical physicist, as cold seeps in under the tent flap, ancient sentence. Someone looks out to the rubble streets, ancient experience. A gang of boys pass in compensatory family formation, ancient configuration. And a dog gnaws on something in the corner of the scenery. But there's no scenery, only total devastation left in this iteration. Another version. Having lived my life close to the poverty line, he says, I don't get much sleep at night. With all the development going on, the backing trucks and blinking lights in a neighborhood long considered uninvestable. Another version. The woman who always remembers my name, but doesn't presume I remember hers, the fraying hem of her pants and sleeves in a place she comes to for warmth and food, where I'm trying to discern the connections, human being to human being. Her name is Christine. Does the end of destruction end the impact, or do the shatterings radiate eternally, as one catastrophe runs into the next cataclysm invertedly? Thus we write out of desperation, which can be a strange form of elation, intent on finding figures in the constellations and music in the random vibrations. We are such perverse, ecstatic animals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. That was amazing. And it's great to see everybody here on such a frosty, frigid day with so much going on. It's so soon in the new year. I'm grateful that you're all here. We're going to skip the interval tonight and go right on to hear from Mohammed Zenia, who I will introduce. Mohammed Zenia Sadiq Yusuf Ibrahim asks, how do we write poetry in an emergency? I suspect we will be all answering that question, or trying to, for the rest of our lives. Zenia is the author of Tel Aviv, James Baldwin's Lungs in the 80s, Black Bedouin, co-written with Tinyana Nassar, and most recently, Black Wittgenstein, of which Roof author Saul Cabrini remarked, quote, in this entanglement of language and thought, where Blackness confronts the limits of philosophy, we find that words are both kiss and wound, irrevocably bound to the structures they seek to dismantle, unquote. In the Paris Review, Benjamin Chrysling notes that Black Wittgenstein evises, quote, density itself, a kind of reconstructed surrealist epic of Black critique that overwhelms with its range and slices with its imagination. Ibrahim's work has refreshingly little to do with the platitudinous, overly carved contemporary poem that sometimes goes viral when bad things happen and people want to confirm their confusion or mystify their position. This book is bold, serious, and so funny, even when it flows like blood and smoke, unquote. Chrysling adds, quote, Ibrahim's critical operation leverages collision over incision, unquote. The poet invites, quote, take any poem, novel, or play. Now imagine all the characters are Black, unquote. In a way, Zenia uses Blackness as a verb to blacken, akin to an analysis that queers the subject, giving us a Black Cervantes, a Black Celine, and a Black Wittgenstein. Case studies in an investigation of an alternative history of undefeated, undestroyed Black genius that recenters the supremacist hierarchies of critical thinking, wrestling Othello away from Shakespeare while reintroducing Olaudah Equiano and Walter F. White, quote, the Iliad was ghostwritten by Nicki Minaj, unquote. The poet delivers us from the jail cells and hospital rooms of pathologized identity and into a new pantheon of discovery and possibility. Zenia asks, how do you lose everything when you don't have shit to lose? Unfortunately, they've formulated an answer. Quote, I'm talking about a loss inside a wound, inside of a wound, unquote. Tel Aviv, Dave Morris tells us, was, quote, written immediately in the span of 5 days, very literally at the printing press at 1080 Press, In response to the current genocide against and in solidarity with the people of Sudan and in the context of immediate echoes in Palestine, Congo, Pakistan, and more, and throughout it all imbued with the immediacy that the global situation demands of us and our moral consciences, unquote. Morgan Vo writes, their voices turned up and wrenched or strangely relaxed. It's a lot of collisions, fields of color that tacitly, the tactility of words and the spillover from dream / nightmare. James Baldwin's Lungs in the 80s is a small and electric book that declares, I want to write poetry till the wheels burn off. The poet wrangles with what they call the politics of Afro-pessimism and asks, in terms of a general dystopian trend toward fascism, quote, was this inevitable or was this a detour or a shift, unquote? They read between the lines of history and poems with titles such as Robert Moses Builds the Colosseum. Zenia is a writer who conceptualizes, quote, the formation of poetry under siege and in the midst of a coup, unquote. They are a siege poet, a war poet, defying the mandates of hard power with scathing historical insight and warlike academic bravery. The stakes are greater than you may know as they realize that, quote, many men have died along the path of poetry and, quote, the limits of our poetry are the contours of war, unquote. Wearily, they surmise, quote, I am black and everything seems built on our bones, unquote, but then they respond with the ferocity of their position as a, quote, lyrical outrider. Of Sudanese descent, they were born in Sofia, Bulgaria, and live in Brooklyn. Please welcome Mohammed Zenia.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to read two poems from Black Wittgenstein, which you can buy this copy, and then the other ones you can order online. I don't have any others, but. Aisha, a monologue. My name is Aisha Curry, but I'm not the Aisha Curry that anyone who doesn't know me, Aisha Curry, would think about. In fact, other than us both being black women with the same name, we have little to nothing in common. I guess. We have obviously never met, and chances of it are very remote. I don't find Steph Curry particularly cute, or honestly even a moderately interesting guy. I don't like basketball, and if I had to choose, I'd choose LeBron. There's something of an underdog there, even though that's not what he is at all. Ohio's just sad. When the other Aisha Curry became famous, people began to comment on me having the same name as her, which is annoying as fuck, by the way. But I started to have this fantasy, or more like a vision, of all of us who were named or had ever been named Aisha Curry in an endless room, living or dead, and sometimes I would almost cry, just to think of this weird line that draws us together, generation to generation. I mean, my name's fucking Aisha Curry. There would be thousands of black women of so many different lives drawn by this sacred bond, whether we hated the name, loved it, or simply tolerated it. Whether it was like a different body and the name was more of a prison, we were in two sacred worlds, embroidered by it. Imagine all of the Aisha Currys, not only now, but into the future, side by side like a family portrait. Wittgenstein hymnal. Eye, body, desire, temple, mount, bone, breath, warm tongue, glued, lips sang love, Euphrates thigh, Mississippi blood, God mouthed the mountains, heralded invisible inverse, and across the riverbank, eye and Nile reflected the crumpled corpse of nigger Jim, absolute zero and still. New Orleans shoulders the Darfur, for no body time body is 0 squared, radiance of Bellevue to Swiss Alp Asylum home. Varies, but the circumference is oddly the same as a plantation Bud Bolden died in. 7 years to the day a secret cousin last shuddered as House Wittgenstein flag fell quiet over occupied Vienna. Okay. Now I'm gonna read some new stuff. This is from a novella, kind of. I can't really write novellas, so part of it's poetry and part of it's prose. Okay. The novella is called Misha, a Russian novel, and this is like the second part called like House Siraj, which is Siraj is Arabic for faggot. So, my ancestors sing Sudan as I ask a Churchill's brat. 1. Round the river run shanty sailors, slightly embarrassed. But what is the sea but a memory of freedom? Burden of naval yards touches the bones under the market. Old Greek, we called him Spinozel, like a dumb cousin, said scarabs die a million death. A grin like slave stolen behind the curtain. I follow the breath of anklet, snatched weave, scattered ripples smear memoria. Blue haunts the question. Who was the first to stumble bold shoulder of a Nile? There among the reeds, stone moss, no garden, but who in our exile gave siege to a name? Like oh shit. Have we thought about calling this a rock? House Siraj brings Sister Manhattan and famine on the dance floor. Siraj, like who in this country isn't gay? Desert to Nairobi, but the club's deserted, gone Cape Canaveral. Lavish like Mansion Musha, Siraj builds palace on Victoria's Palisades. Abdomen mothers the mothers. Ring like endless in light, meditation, exile, dawn. Stone reveals gin, jail, sin, England and drought. Brought trance to hospital sun, Nile kneels to Kitchenger's loose limbs. Scarred tongue textures regret, as we all know the story. The Khalifa fleeing in anguish and bone. Bring it up to your lips and blow. This shadow is all throat, apparition, desert shade, and 3 tears for the brave women of Gierza, blessing the wind. The Tsar is an open garden to ourselves, reflected in the catacombs of cable, an invitation to forget. Every sad song carries the germ of Dresden. The girls label liturgical silence like angels composed medicine, soft-bellied boxers, a collars unfiled, gifted gold braided Braille to the harem. Late for the bus, you notice Bosnian flames. Your date stands you up. That's like 9/11. Car won't start. 9/11. Lose your job. That's like 10 9/11s. Your dog dies and it feels like a plane to your heart. You don't like your dad in his own way. That bastard is Saddam. Every Thermopylae, like staring into Pompeii. At the bar, you're drunk in the bathroom, remembering the people who you hurt. Like a housing development built on Virginia's last wetland, and saying, hey, that's 9/11. There hasn't been a good club since the 80s. And suffering the trance, hungry and wet. Manhattan like misery is a circle. See once broken and deaf. See once path broken and deaf. You are your ancestors being fucked and fucking. Same sentence, same light, robotic motion. Like a lung grows a second lung, collapses, and from the ash of a bathhouse sprouts the apocalypse like a lilac. Clones are too bored to fuck. Not dying, boring, but happy. Hand jobs, contemplated wine on a crumbling terrace, sentimental war songs from Whale Valhalla, whisper blitzkrieg morning, the same way that death builds a country. In Khartoum, where the girls wear the trauma like a talisman, the lost Nubian from the river of Vain to Aswan is stuck like a marriage, bad finances. Was something heroically lost in the rice Nile that stank like a beached land after a riot? Churchill's mother now wears neon skin, the Mokti's head like a medallion, 3 coats, king, god, cunty. This body is a vision of yourself like, well, fucking a time machine. Elegant collapse of empire, 71 Khartoum, awkward ass tussle. Arabic Marvin Gaye mouthing love letter resurrection, but the Mokti's too late. Life itself bleeds historical melody. Corner Sook soars a war orphan. See the Summers Marvel movie Nameless. Abdomen massacre, heavy machines lace the sky. Small miracle of industrial desire, and here we see the filmatic hero helplessly humping air. Like tragedy is a semblance of swallowing, like this marks Cain. The twink flicking a cigarette onto the train track Berlin. Now spirit walk with me. One wind sweeps bone, smoke, desert and blue. Meanwhile, somewhere hopeless in South England, Derek Jarman dies. Can you comprehend the terrible calligraphy we will like children or dogs? Raise 2 palms to purple sky and bleed. Legacy lyric, this part of London was cum splattered and empty. Showing teeth, well, that's what we call the wages of transgression. Mario Melli understood this and died. Mouth full in the garden, spun and countered, and oh yes, House Shiraz. Okay. This is, I guess, chapter 2. Stargazing in Baltimore, or starglazing in Baltimore, sorry. It's stardust, isn't it? Laps the wind like coal. Some evenings the frost bites the apple. I smother other oiled fields sin, but it's always empty hands. The air of chariot musk, horseshit and sorrow. Welcome to Maryland. Somebody hiccups outside taverns at dusk. Some people die. Others lash themselves helpless. Cathedrals as some wars never end. The ornate catastrophe, the same question before God. Who came first? The egg or hen, in cities frothing at the mouth with gourd, I could understand the fragrance of the body. But out west, everyone just smells like cum or tuna salad all the time. You gotta ask what it is we're doing here. Isn't the history of the continent enough? There's already slavery touching every porous soul of this earth. Why remand yourself the torment of port towns spilling their industrial pain? Well, simple enough, I wanted to see the world. Was kidnapped or conscripted depending on who you asked. The Khalifa outside Ottoman, infamous fleeing the night before the fields of death that left the sand raw, the Nile curled itself blood like minarets. When I was just a child, born of a special caste, dancing the miraculous melancholy of the century Sudan, cloistered for slaves on Cairo, constellation hovel, shadow grass, that vain reflection, see a million stone faces, even the dog stricken, like a satellite image of Kuan City, blink twice. Doesn't the earth vibe blunt synergy? Like a freight train crashes shantytown Kingston 36. As Madrid lowers the red and black, Munich mourns something irrevocable but obviously ominous. South Africa plies the gallows and Mississippi continues to murder our cousins. Things don't change. If there's one lesson the desert teaches you, is that everything eventually falls to ruin. And 36 Paulo is blanketed next to his brother as the barnacle still sticks to Portugal, and as the university awaits one, I bore shoes to Guadalajara, regaled French and already forlorn. Rupture oasis to Mesa, some peace, many bones. The body moves stupid. That's how the future will echo it anyways. Bad built alien architecture. Okay, so imagine your heart, gold light hovers doom Manhattan. Later the pyramids shrink autonomous oasis, wasted purple dawn. Can you understand that this is a story of failure? Weren't we always yearning nameless love? FDR Drive crumbles like the return of childhood polio. The city is island-like chasms, open blood, gathers the ground, lay its head like a vision of a halo over the Sierra Nevada. Night-tainted, dustless mountain orange coriander. I mean the smell, a small piece of eternity, like we all deserve a little snack. Even the donkey side corpses, Hollywood Mausoleum, Bloodbath, Baja California, sparkles the Fossil Museum. How much death has made this continent? We marched and our comrades fell, or their comrades fell. Anyways, many comrades fell. We burned villages, the odor like a curse. Some of the men fell to war and allowed it to envelop them like the priesthood or a broken bag. Others in nobility killed themselves while I freed desiccated dunes in NU, walking Carolina's picturesque Arizona rosary. But still I can't tell if I was hallucinating the bishops nailed to a cross on the canyon upside down next to a thief and a fag. Cactus liver, a vulture rest, river lilac, it's fall. Prairie silence, the brambles tangle a seldom song, as if a meteor had drowned itself, sculpted a temple to God from carved earth, its belly showing like Saint Sebastian. The scars return over foothills, we take our bite too. Mexico illuminates the craving, the glimmer of resurrection inside a volcano. Valley veiled, drunk moon and lost, we wandered almost listed with murder. The monastery wasn't empty when we entered, but rather we nailed him, body warm as the monks wailed, a semi-detached cell with Christ agonizing over a disused fireplace. Like obviously we're fucking. The night winking, the soft dunes witness, but also the small sandstone porters seem in on it too. And I understand this was once all water. As I'm penetrated, I can feel the unity of oceans, pyramid to pyramid, Sudanese lost in Aslan dream. I stare at the ceiling, and in this is the kiss of freedom, a brief tongue. This life is finite, I mean. Mostly we know ourselves composed of the skirmishes that fall outside of war, lips, thighs, assholes, what we know as bone falling fruitless energy into the arms of a novice. Tomorrow against the wall, only to be buried, mass grave, I dug it myself, with all the other young men of the village. You flee, you lose love and you free. The River Grande was always and what was and still is a nightmare. Same racist rancher, shotgun, barbed wire, and dogs drag the dungeon desert, but it will never raise a lion. And how the Americans say this, isn't life shit? You make it Mason-Dixon, noose drawn, dodging small-town inebriated tombstone, Dakota bound like Paul on a donkey, but this is where the trouble begins. Welcome to the apocalypse, nigga. You hear digging your own grave. Westward rattles the reverberation. Ottoman Nubians, buffalo soldiers, brief dances with indignity, same slaughter. In New Orleans, the levees conjure their atonement. Remove time sideways like a circle. See red, blue. That means the east side around Magnolia. The feathers echo cruelty outside physics. On the park side, knives flash their silver against the swamp. But even here, we can touch something of happiness. His skin showers the night starless and holy, cock like a god. His name was Samuel, and he had been free for quite some time. We slept back alley and made love shack to shack from Lafayette to Jacksonville. Arched back, I asked him what it was he most desired. To be free from the body, he said solemnly. It was March and the flooding had begun. One night a gator entered the parlor. Terrified, I wanted nothing more than to run, to disappear or become a gun. I thought that was what he meant too. Every place has its own magic, a radiation of forgiveness and its limits. Some dance through tragedy, reflect Reflect ourselves, our country, washed up on any shore and broken. Others turn inward to the animal, somehow hobbled from the ruin of 1,000 bodies. Say a fox with green eyes takes your child. A plantation owner sells the other. On the Nile, we cakewalk all humiliation. I, eunuch, and I, smiling. There could only be retribution from a just God. They set traps for us here. Prison, syphilis, the Pentecost, or the army. But what is beautiful in life shows itself a century and a half later as we arrive in the city looking like bombed out Berlin in the 40s, Weimar, fabulous and all. Freedom is an odd number. In barbershop basement, church organs, but devil's jazz. You see, black really is magic. The limbs move past the score. A man can become a rabbit, a woman, a player with a limp in a yacht, or a sailor. We kiss blindly because we are blinded by love. No Lord but hands, feet, heart. The girl sachet, soundless judgment, as dumb as I am, I ask if this is Baltimore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Evelyn. Next week,
Saul Cabrini and Charles Bernstein.
hope to see you all here then. Oh, and don't forget, there's some books here.